millionaire father stunned, watching black waitress care for her sick daughter at diner. Jonathan sat back in the vinyl booth, eyes narrowing as rain slapped the diner's window in heavy, jittery drips. The usual hum of the city felt miles away, swallowed by the gray storm outside. The air inside was thick, a mix of greasy fries, burnt coffee, and something sharp he couldn't place. His fingers wrapped around a dainty espresso cup that felt out of place in this tired little spot. Overpriced? Definitely. Underwhelming? Absolutely. But he needed a break from his marble towers and silk chaos. Then he saw her. Angela. She moved with a strange stillness amid the chaos, like she was the eye of the storm. Dark skin glowing under the flickering neon light, hands steady as steel, despite the chipped paint on the counter and the snappy whispers of customers. She wasn't just a waitress here. She was a mother with a secret fight wrapped tight inside her gaze. At the far corner sat a little girl no older than 6, wrapped in a threadbare jacket, cheeks flushed and damp with sweat. Her head lolled to the side, eyelids heavy as a winter dusk. Angela bent close, brushing a stray curl from her daughter's clammy forehead, with hands that trembled just a hint. Somewhere deep, Jonathan felt a raw ache twist tight around his ribs, an echo of a world he'd never known. The diner felt like a heartbeat, out of sync with everything he owned. Around him, murmurs rose and fell. A man grumbled over his cold burger. A woman wiped a smudge from the window. But beneath the background noise, Angela's world held a quiet sis. Her eyes flicked once to her daughter, then to the kitchen, where orders clattered and a faint sizzling screamed of rushed dinners and broken promises. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp crash tore through the diner. Pots and pans tumbled from the kitchen shelving with an angry clang, a scream barely catching in the sudden silence. The customers froze. Angela's body jerked, her face splitting into swift flickers of fear and determination. Jonathan felt every muscle in his neck snap to attention. The strange pull inside him, half shock, half something more, woke up in a flood. Could he help? Could he, with all his money and awkward hands, step into this raw, tangled moment of broken strength? Or was this crash the signal that his world and hers were about to collide and maybe shatter? The diner's storm pressed in closer. The sick child's shallow breaths sounded louder. Somehow, Jonathan's gaze locked on Angela's quiet fight. The question hovered in the heavy air. What happens when two lives, worlds apart, get trapped in the same storm? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And while you're there, drop a powerful like. It really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know each incredible person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The diner felt electric, charged with an impending tension that pulsed through the air like snapping wires. Jonathan's heart raced as he gripped the edge of the table, eyes flitting between Angela and... He felt raw and exposed, every nerve ending alert. When the crash finally settled into tense silence, the whispers of the customers receded, swallowed whole by the gravity of the moment. Then, like a blade, piercing through the gloom, Angela's phone buzzed violently from her pocket, a sound that didn't fit in the symphony of clattering dishes and low murmurs. She reached for it instantly, her face shifting from worry to terror in the blink of an eye. Jonathan leaned closer, caught in her sudden stillness. No one blinked. The diner held its breath. Angela's fingers trembled as she swiped the screen, and the blood drained from her face. "No, please," she gasped, eyes darting to her daughter. The room fell silent, each breath a question. What could be so devastatingly urgent? Then she whispered something that made Jonathan's stomach twist. "They found out. I thought I was safe. But safe from what?" The tension snapped and elongated as a tall man in a dark coat burst through the diner's door, face shadowed under the brim of his hat. His presence commanded attention, eyes scanning the space with an unsettling intensity. Jonathan stiffened, every instinct surging. He was unlike any customer. He was a storm that promised destruction. "Angela," the man drawled, smooth as silk, but harsh as shattered glass. "You should have known better than to hide." A thunderous heartbeat echoed in Jonathan's ears, and he felt the world shift as the reality of Angela's life slipped into focus. A life that was woven together with threads of secrecy and fear. She was no ordinary waitress. She was a fugitive. Was it because of the man before him? "What do you want?" she said, her voice rising an octave, fear coiling in her throat. "I'm done running." Jonathan's mind raced. Was she a criminal? Had she stolen something? Or was she running from something darker? The man took a step closer, a smirk curling on his lips, the kind that promised chaos. "You know too much, Angela. You thought you could escape, but I told you, you're mine." An electric jolt ran through the room, customers shifting uncomfortably in their seats, fear and intrigue mingling in the air. Jonathan's pulse quickened. This was not just a waitress's desperate struggle. It was a collision with a nightmare. The man was clearly a threat, but also the last link in a terrible chain that bound them all. Angela's expression hardened, defiance carving lines into her features. "I'll never go back to that life," she spat. "You can't control me anymore." The man's smile widened, venomous. "We'll see about that." His voice dripped danger as he pulled a small object from his coat, something glinting. Yes, a knife. Anger swept over Jonathan, hot and sudden, burning away his self-consciousness. "Leave her alone," he shouted, the words tearing from his throat, igniting a fire in his chest that he never knew existed. All eyes turned to him now, the diner wrapped in an electric pulse of tension as Angela's gaze flickered toward him. It was a look that charged the air with shared recognition, a frantic plea marred by betrayal, the kind that cut deeper than any blade. Then the door swung wide, light spilling in, revealing two police officers, silhouetted against the storm outside. "What's going on in here?" One barked. The man's smirk evaporated, and in a moment both dizzying and surreal, he faded back into the shadows, muttering something under his breath that chilled Jonathan to the bone. You can't escape your past, or those who will come for it. As the officers moved in, the atmosphere shifted again, brittle and worn, ready to shatter. And in that split second, but truth emerged. Nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. Jonathan felt it, a chasm opening between them all, secrets unraveling like strands of thread. He now stood on the edge of a darkness he hadn't signed up for. What secrets lay behind Angela's quiet strength? Where did the threads of their lives intertwine? All he knew was that this storm was far from over. The diner felt like a ticking time bomb, tension thickening the air as the officers moved in, their uniforms crisp against the backdrop of chaos. Jonathan's heart hammered in his chest, a storm brewing within him. Angela's defiance was palpable, shimmering against the man's dark threat, a collision of worlds teetering on the edge of an explosion. Patrons murmured in confusion, eyes darting between the unfolding drama and the flickering neon lights that cast a melancholy glow on chipped linoleum. Just as the first officer stepped forward, the door swung open again, revealing a younger man drenched from the rain, his face hidden beneath a soaked hoodie. He burst through, breathless, panic etched on his features. "Angela, you need to..." Gasps filled the diner, the tension snapping like a frayed wire. Jonathan felt a jolt, something instinctual, raw, like a flash of lightning illuminating a dark sky. The newcomer's gaze locked onto the man in the hat, a look of fear and recognition flooding his eyes. "You're not safe here." The man in the hat, still looming, turned sharply, recognition dawning before anger contorted his features. "Who the hell are you?" "Jacob, run!" Angela screamed, her voice a knife cutting through the rising chaos. Jonathan's mind reeled. Who was this Jacob? And why was Angela so terrified? Questions unfolded like ripples in water, echoing unseen depths. The diner buzzed with whispered speculation and mounting dread. "Jacob?" the officer called out, a protective stance forming. "What do you know about this?" The young man gulped, glancing between the two officers and Angela. Desperation, raw. "They're coming for her. She didn't just run. She betrayed them." A chilling silence rooted itself among the diners, the air freezing thick with implications. Jonathan felt a visceral jolt. Betrayed? What had Angela done? The woman who had moved with such fierce determination, was she wrapped within the coils of deceit? "No, it's not like that!" Angela's voice cracked, pleading, but the tremor of fear began to creep back, threading through her defiance. She stepped toward Jacob, her expression a tempest of emotions, pain and resolve. "I had to!" The man in the hat stepped closer, eyes narrowing, glinting with malice. "You thought you could play both sides? There's no escaping this. Stop. Just stop. A voice erupted. A woman sitting in the back corner, her weathered hands trembling around a cup of coffee. Whatever this is, it's none of our business. Let her go. But the air had thickened with relentless violence now, everyone on edge. Jonathan watched Angela's face, a theater of raw emotion. Could he, should he, intervene? Suddenly, Jacob raised his hands, urgency lacing his actions. I have proof. They're not just threats. They've been watching her. A whole organization. The syndicate. A murmur rose, horror sweeping through the diner. Angela's eyes widened, vulnerability flashing through her facade. You said you'd protect us, she whispered to Jacob, a plea buried in the weight of their shared past. The man in the hat sneered, inching close. You're both dead if you don't hand over what you stole. Just then, the second officer lunged forward, the atmosphere compressing, fingers tightening around a radio strapped to her hip. But in a heartbeat, the world turned upside down. Jacob, panic surging, ripped a crumpled envelope from his jacket. In one swift motion, he tossed it toward the officers. It's all inside. Everything. A cacophony of gasps erupted. Every patron's breath held tight as the envelope flared open midair. Papers scattered, swirling like dead leaves caught in a storm. As they fluttered down, Jonathan's eyes widened at an image. A photograph. It wasn't just any photo. It was a close-up of Angela. But her identity revealed beneath. Her name, Nia Carter, a wanted criminal. The headline beneath it screamed, Dangerous Connections. And just like that, revelations shattered the diner's fragile peace. Jonathan's pulse thundered in his ears. Nothing was as it seemed. Angela, or Nia, was not just caught in danger. She was the danger. Jonathan felt his whole perception shift violently. He was now ensnared in a web of deceit and chaos, and the storm had only just begun. What did I just get into? He whispered, the darkness closing in around him, linked forever to these secrets. The diner vibrated with an unsettling energy, like it had drawn a deep breath before unleashing the storm. Jonathan's heart hammered in his chest. Every beat weighted with fear and expectation, a cage that throbbed against his ribs. Papers drifted down, fluttering like reluctant confetti, each one a harbinger of devastating truth, cutting deeper with every swirl they made. Angela, Nia Carter, stood before him frozen, a storm brewing in her dark eyes, fear and determination clashing like thunder in the air. Around them, silence enveloped the diner, patrons wide-eyed and whispering, barely breathing in the tension. And in that uneasy quiet, the weight of the photographs soaked into Jonathan's consciousness, pulling him into a reality that felt more like a nightmare than a moment of clarity. What have you done? Murmured someone at the back, a gray-haired man, clutching his coffee like it was a life-bell. You have to understand, it wasn't just about running. She's caught in something bigger. The man in the hat leaned closer, his condescension dripping from sharp features. Bigger? Oh, sweetheart, you have no idea the depths of your betrayal. His smile stretched, revealing too many teeth. a predator circling its prey. "Tell them, Angela. Show them how deep this runs." Angela, Nia, quelled a shudder, her breath wavering in the charged atmosphere. But before she could respond, a piercing shriek shattered the diner's fragile bubble. A woman stood up, her hands trembling as she stared wide-eyed at the door. The sound resonated ominously, reverberating through Jonathan, tinged with fear that ran deeper than the moment. But before anyone could shift their gaze, the door blasted open again, this time sending rain cascading into the diner, revealing yet another figure. A tall woman draped in a long leather coat, soaked yet defiant. "Get back, all of you!" Her voice cut through the tension, sharp and authoritative. Before anyone could react, she pulled something from her coat, a sleek device that hummed ominously, lights blinking. "I know you're here. Show yourselves!" Her eyes glinted, scanning the diner like a hawk locked on its prey. The man in the hat's expression twisted into fury, recognition darkening his features. "You shouldn't have come here, Leela." "Leela?" The name echoed through Jonathan's mind, unanswered questions spiraling into the void. And then came the truth, an explosion of revelation that splintered the fragile web. "You all think she's a fugitive?" Lila spat, eyes blazing. "She's not who you think she is. This is all a setup." Jonathan's breath caught. Setup? What did she mean? Nia, Angela, wasn't just a runaway, but a pawn in something far more sinister. He felt the words pulse through him, electrifying. Who was telling the truth? Lila's sudden presence upended the narrative, shifting the roles in a disorienting dance of secrets. All eyes turned to Angela, but her look was a mask of pure chaos, everything spinning out of control. "No, you can't do this." Jacob's panic rose, jagged shards of desperation cleaving between them. "You can't throw her under the bus just because you're afraid of what's coming." But Lila didn't falter, her voice like ice as she drew closer. "Afraid? I'm not afraid of the storm, Jacob. I'm here to end it. What you don't know is that Angela is the key, the lifeline they're seeking to control everything." Jonathan felt the world teeter on the edge. The gravity of her words sank like stones in his gut. He watched Angela's face, a torrent of emotions crashing inside her. Was she truly the center of it all? Or just another innocent, caught in a web too thick to see through? Before he could process what this meant, a sudden flash erupted outside. An explosion, drowning the diner's fragile walls in vibrating chaos. The live wires connecting them all sparked, and Jonathan's mind raced, scrambling to comprehend the nightmare unfurling. This was no longer just a story of flight or survival. It turned into a calculating game of shadows and betrayals, cast against a backdrop of destruction. A daunting truth emerged. In this tangled web of loyalty and lies, everyone played their part, but only one could ultimately hold the power. Jonathan's heart crashed against his chest. What new path lay ahead? And what had just been ignited with that explosive revelation? He felt the edge of a dark precipice, the storm far from over, ready to open a gaping maw of consequences. The diner erupted into frantic chaos as the explosion reverberated in Jonathan's ears, ripping him from the moment. Debris fell, plates smashed, chairs toppled, and the air thickened with fear and acrid smoke. Panic surged through the patrons, drowning out the city beyond the glass, where blaring horns mingled with the drumming rain. But jagged silence sliced through the screaming confusion, leaving everyone momentarily suspended as debris rained down like a cacophony of shattered hopes. Angela, Nia, had been catapulted backward into the counter, shock coating her features. Jacob's face morphed into a mask of horror, eyes wide, breath labored. The man in the hat had flinched, momentarily caught off guard. Leela, still poised, returned her device to her pocket, a look of grim determination carving into her brow. Jonathan's vision narrowed on Angela. The darkness swirling around her, it was an urgency, a piercing clarity cutting through the chaos. "Listen, Jonathan," she said, voice barely a whisper, but charged with adrenaline. "You need to know the truth." Before she could continue, the door exploded inward again, tugged open by a pair of uniformed agents, their eyes darting around the frantic scene. "Get down!" one shouted, rushing over as the other rushed to control the panic. But Angela's voice broke through like glass shattering. "It's not them. They're not here to help." Everything on her face tightened, tension rising. The assembled diners hesitated, caught in the crossfire of fear and distrust, as if they'd been ensnared in a twisted game. Jonathan's instincts screamed, "Trust her?" The choice felt monumental. "What do you mean?" he demanded, adrenaline surging through him. But before Angela could enlighten him, the man in the hat turned back, a frightening calm wrapping around him, like a predator sizing up prey. "Everyone here is a threat," he said, voice steady. "And the real danger—" He gestured, and the diners recoiled, eyes wide. "It's here." As he spoke, the tremble began, not in the ground or walls, but in the very atmosphere. Suddenly, the lights flickered wildly, and a shiver cascaded through the crowd. A deep, rumbling growl vibrated, tautening every nerve. Jonathan glanced toward the exit, just in time to witness shadows darting past, intertwining with the blinding flash of racing headlights outside. Then came the truth, an ear-piercing sound, not an explosion, but the distinct thwack of a helicopter's blade slicing through the downpour. Moments later, the front of the diner erupted with flashlights cutting through the rain. Glaring beams silhouetted dark figures donning tactical gear. "Federal agents," one shouted, voice booming like a thunderclap, driving the weight of power into the room. "Angela Carter, you are under arrest." The air thickened with disbelief, a collective gasp mingling with the chaos. Angela, Nia, wasn't the only one with secrets. Jonathan felt a jolt of rage wash over him. She'd signed up for this life, hadn't she? "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," Angela cried, her voice breaking, the fragility evident, as if she were on the verge of crumbling. She turned to Jacob, a look of desperation on her face. "This isn't what we planned." "Planned?" Jacob's expression warped into pure horror. "You were supposed to protect them. This was your chance to take them down." The diner's atmosphere crackled with tension. A showdown brewing. Everyone on the brink of an awakening none had anticipated. Amid the collective chaos, a revelation unspooled. Anger, betrayal, and the stark truth that perhaps they weren't just pawns. They were pieces in a far larger game. Suddenly, Jonathan recalled Lila's earlier words. The setup. Had they all been players driven together by choice? Or was this orchestrated? The thought pushed him into a spiral of dread and uncertainty. Who could be trusted? What other layers lay buried, unseen beneath the surface? As he stepped toward Angela, determination fused with fear. "You have to tell me what's going on, Nia." His voice shattered the air, a plea and a command as the agents bore down on them. But the light and shadows closed around them as a cataclysm of understanding descended. They were entwined, caught in a machination deeper than they could fathom. Those they trusted had become threats, and secrets had become treacherous weapons. Moments blurred when another voice sliced through the tumult, abrupt and searing. "Angela, you have to come with me." Jonathan turned. An unexpected figure emerged from the shadows, revealing a face long buried in the past. His breath caught as recognition dawned. It was someone who should have been forgotten. All along, hidden in the folds of betrayal. Someone who turned everything he thought he knew upside down. "Eve," he whispered, heart racing as the revelation clawed for space within him. "You?" And just like that, an entirely new layer of darkness unleashed. Hope felt distant amidst the storm as the lines between allies and enemies blurred, the web tightening around them, with the stakes rising higher than ever. What consequences lay ahead in the chaos ready to be unleashed? What choices would they make in the fray of truths and lies? The storm was only beginning. The diner thrummed with anxiety, every heartbeat punctuated by uncertainty, as Jonathan stood frozen, his mind racing from the shock of seeing Eve, a woman he once believed lost to the fogs of a distant past, now stood in front of him, drenched yet undeniably fierce. The air crackled around them, heavy with truths about to peel back, layer by layer. "Eve," he breathed, the name spilling from his lips like a forgotten prayer. "What are you doing here, Jonathan? We don't have time." She glanced around, eyes darting past the chaos. Her urgency ignited something primal within him. Fear? Rage. It tangled together as he tried to make sense of it all. "You're all in danger. The syndicate? It's closer than you think." "Danger?" Angela's voice shrilled, panic threading through her words. "What do you mean?" The hairs on the back of Jonathan's neck prickled as he felt the weight of her betrayal looming larger. "Listen to her," Jacob interjected, his eyes wide. "What's this about the syndicate?" Eve didn't flinch, her voice steely and composed. "It's not just that they're hunting you, Nia. It's that someone on the inside has been feeding them information." A collective gasp rippled through the diner, disbelief mingling with dread. Jonathan's heart raced as he locked eyes with Angela, her expression morphing from confusion to alarm. The man in the hat crossed his arms, a smirk playing on his lips. "What a tangled web we weave, and yet you'll still be caught in it. There was a cruel delight radiating from him, as if he knew secrets that could drown them all. But before anyone could respond, Eve raised a finger, signaling urgency. No, listen, they know where we are right now. There's no time. We have to. And then, without warning, the power surged, lights flickering as the diner's entrance exploded inward one more time, scattering glass and shrapnel everywhere. The atmosphere shifted instantly, striking fear deep within Jonathan's soul. When the smoke settled, a shadowy figure stepped in, silhouetted against the streetlights, face obscured under a wide-brimmed hat. "You thought you could hide?" A chilling voice rang out, slicing through the chaos like a dagger. "You've all been so foolish." "Who are you?" one of the officers shouted, pulling his weapon, the adrenaline making it tremble in his hands. But the figure ignored him, a slow, methodical approach unfurling. "Nia Carter, it's time to come home." The syllables dripped with malice as the figure revealed a device that gleamed wickedly. A trigger, an endgame, waiting for the right moment to spark. A breath caught in Jonathan's throat as he realized the truth, a truth he'd never imagined. "Nia, you're not just running. You're a part of this." The words erupted, the revelation washing over him like a flash flood. Angela. Nia staggered back, horror etching itself into her features, lips parted in shock. "No, Enough," the figure barked, pointing the weapon at her, the chilling certainty in the air, as silence wrapped around them like a shroud. "Hand over the files, and maybe there's a chance for you." "What files?" Jonathan shouted, confusion spiraling into anger. The room trembled with tension, raw and palpable. Eve's voice was tight, urgent. "The ones that could bring them down, the very reason she fled." "No!" Angela roared, adrenaline coursing through her veins as if lit by a flame. "I didn't know. I was trying to escape their grasp, not play a role." The reality hung heavy between them. The facade of a waitress, a mother, shattered in an instant. Jonathan felt betrayed by every ounce of trust he had placed in her. And yet, he couldn't ignore the realization. She was deeper in this than he had ever understood. "Jonathan," Eve's voice cut through like a siren. "We need to move. They're playing us against each other." The figure laughed, a low, sinister sound echoing. "They've already won." Jonathan felt the ground beneath him give way, chaos swirling into a maelstrom of shattered loyalties. Just as it seemed all hope would dissolve into darkness, a deafening roar thundered from outside, a truck barreling down the street, tires screeching, metal crunching, as the familiar vehicle crashed through the diner's front, obliterating the entrance entirely. The storm of chaos erupted as the truth settled, raw and open, a revelation that shattered everything. Who held the real power? And just then, the door swung open, revealing multiple figures clothed in black. "Go. We don't have time," they shouted, and within a heartbeat, Jonathan knew this single moment would redefine their struggle forever. Seizing Angela's shaking hand, a spark ignited in his chest. They had to survive this storm, to fight against all the shadows closing in, before everything they thought they knew crumbled into ash. "We fight together," he shouted, forging ahead into the unknown. And as they stepped into the trepidation of the night, this collision of lives transformed into a chaotic dance of survival. No turning back. What lay ahead was a convergence of destiny, and within it lingered a knowing truth. In the eye of the storm, those caught in the web of treachery would find their fate entwined forever. The air crackled with tension as Jonathan gripped Angela's trembling hand, the edges of panic sharp enough to slice through the chaos of the diner. Every heartbeat thrummed ominous and electric, a prelude to the storm unfolding just beyond the shattered entrance. "Hiko, move!" A voice barked from the back of the diner, part command, part desperate plea. The figures in black appeared like phantoms materializing from a nightmare, and Jonathan's stomach churned, every instinct screaming for flight. But as he urged Angela forward, uncertainty gnawed at his resolve. There were secrets tethered to them all, tightening like a noose. Then, without warning, the man in the hat stepped toward them again, a twisted smile creeping across his face, eyes glinting with malicious delight. "You really think you can escape?" he drawled, voice smooth like silk, but tainted with venom. The shadows behind him rippled, drawing closer as if they lived of their own accord. "Not today," Lila shouted, stepping forward, fierce and unyielding. Her presence ignited an undercurrent of courage that coursed through Jonathan. "They'll never take her again." But the man laughed, a chilling sound that echoed against the diner's walls. "Oh, but it's already too late." He raised his hand, fingers curling around something that glinted ominously. A detonator. "You see, I've set a timer on your little sanctuary, my dear. In 3 minutes, this diner will be nothing but rubble." Jonathan's breath caught as time snapped taut around them, sudden and unforgiving. The air grew thick with dread. "What?" he shouted, urgency clawing at him as he turned to Angela, ready to execute the only choice left: exfiltration, escape into the night. But then a rumbling erupted from the kitchen, and another figure burst through the swinging door, this one wearing a familiar face, grim yet definitive. It was an agent clothed in a tailored suit, drenched but unfazed. "It's over, David," she shouted at the man in the hat. David? The name sliced through Jonathan's mind like glass. "You know the syndicate won't let you win. Let her go." "Joanna?" David responded, incredulity mingling with disdain. "You're out of line. They won't save you." And then it happened. A hush draped over the room as Jonathan connected the dots. Joanna, the last person he would have expected, was working undercover for the agency, hunting Angela. It was a twist that buckled his knees, a betrayal that descended like an avalanche, crushing everything in its path. You're with them?" Jonathan's world began to tilt, every thread of loyalty unraveling. "Yes, I'm here to contain this mess," Joanna snapped, eyes blazing, but deep down, Jonathan could sense the conflict, the remnants of their shared past laced through every taut word. "You don't understand the stakes, Jonathan. Angela's eyes widened, and for an instant, Jonathan felt the air drain from the room, his lungs tightening with disbelief. She had wrestled with her identity for too long, and now the truth slipped further away, swallowed by duplicity and chaos. "Joanna, you don't have to do this," Angela cried, desperation carving soft lines into her voice. But Joanna stepped closer, determination racing with resolution. "I do. This isn't just about you anymore. They'll come for everyone involved, and I can't let that happen." The timer on David's device began ticking down, each second a guillotine, and Jonathan felt the walls close in, crushing the spaces between them. In that instant, the truth erupted. Angela wasn't merely a fugitive caught in a web of danger. She was the epicenter of a colossal betrayal, drawn in shades of gray, designed perhaps by Joanna herself. As he stared into Angela's eyes, he saw a flicker of hope amidst the turmoil, a plea that ignited a fire inside him. "No matter what, we're getting out of here," he shouted, voice reverberating against the chaos. Joanna gasped, a hint of fear flashing across her features. "You're a fool to trust her." But before Jonathan could respond, the diner shuddered violently, walls trembling, and just then, a blaring horn echoed from outside. A truck skidded to a halt, its engine growling, familiar, warm. Jacob. In that heartbeat of connection, everything shifted. What lay ahead was no escape. It transformed into a relentless fight against not just the ticking clock, but against treachery spiraling tighter around them. Who could he trust? Who truly held the blade? As the timer ticked rapidly down, they were all racing toward a terrifying convergence. The storm rising to meet them, and within that violence, Jonathan sensed a battle not just for freedom, but for their very souls. He turned desperately to Angela, and the question burned unspoken between them. Could they escape both the past and the present before it exploded in their faces? The blue and red lights of the truck's flashers sliced through the smoke-filled diner, casting a frenetic glow across the chaos. Time felt elastic, each heartbeat stretching as Jonathan's urgency collided with the panic swirling around him. "We're not leaving anyone behind," he shouted, gripping Angela tightly. He darted his gaze toward Joanna, whose expression shifted between disbelief and anger, yet she didn't make a move. Jacob burst through the door, drenched and alive, but behind him followed even darker figures. Agents draped in shadows, armed and tense, stepping over the wreckage with purpose. "We need to move, now!" Jacob yelled, beckoning sharply before pointing back to the entrance. "They won't stop!" Time clutched desperately at Jonathan's throat, constricting as the timer on the detonator ticked ominously, a heartbeat echoing doom. He could feel the weight of life hanging in the balance, the air thick with uncertainty and a hint of unyielding dread. But just as he thought they were sealed in a world gone mad, a piercing sound sliced through the storm, a voice, sharp and demanding. "Stop, right there!" An authoritative tone boomed from the shadows, slicing through the din. The doors swung wide open to reveal an imposing figure stepping into the diner's chaos. A woman, her posture commanding, with a strength that held the power to yank their fates apart. She wore tactical gear and a familiar steel-gray uniform, face half obscured by the hood of her jacket. When recognition hit, all thoughts froze. Agent Hayes? Jonathan's heart plummeted. The head of the federal agency had been tracking the syndicate for years, always the smoke behind the mirror, always lurking in the background. But there was no warmth of reunion in the air, only the chill of betrayal. "You're all in serious trouble," she declared, gaze cemented on Angela, and the weight of her accusing look pressed down hard like a judge's gavel. "Step away from her. She needs to be taken into custody." "What?" Jonathan's voice cracked with indignation. "Why would you—" "Because she's a traitor." Agent Hayes snapped, eyes blazing. "You think she's been running from the syndicate? She's been working with them, Jonathan. This was all part of her plan." The atmosphere collapsed under the weight of her words, shadows shifting with disbelief, eyes widening around the diner, like gasping fish out of water. Angela had been a double agent? The shattered bits of Jonathan's trust scattered across the floor like glass. "No, that's not true!" Angela's voice rose, but her desperation met the coast of silence, each word thick with icy fear. "I was trying to break free. You have to believe me." "You're going to prisons for the rest of your life." Agent Hayes's voice thundered back, unyielding. "You've been feeding the syndicate intel all along." Everything surged and crashed, truths collapsing, loyalties disintegrating, and the once familiar faces turned unfamiliar as walls closed in around Jonathan's mind. The fragments started to come together, pieces of a puzzle that turned the whole story on its head. And then came the barrage. "How did you find out?" Jacob's voice trembled with sudden realization, panic threading through every syllable. "You said you were just afraid of them. This was all planned?" In those fleeting moments, she didn't defend herself. Angela's eyes shifted, darting around. Not in fear, but in something sharper, something calculating, that Jonathan had never seen before. A flash of cunning lit her gaze, and Jonathan took a step back, the last glimmer of trust evaporating into the suffocating air. "You never meant to escape," he whispered, revulsion gripping his heart. "You only needed us to trust you." "Yes," she said, lips curling into a grin that cut deep, her demeanor shifting like the wind. The weight of betrayal loomed heavy in the air, igniting a furious fire in him. "And now, it's time for you to choose a side." As the timer counted down into the last seconds of their lives, the diner thrummed with tension, the impending explosion now just a capstone to a far worse reality. "You fed us all lies, Nia," Jonathan shouted, heart racing as realization sunk deeply. Hope flickered like a dying ember as he glanced at Joanna, Jacob, and the others, their faces painted with disbelief. And there it was, the truth flooding in, revelations colliding with chaos. What if everything he thought he knew about Angela, no, Nia, was a carefully constructed facade? As he stood on the precipice of this horrific revelation, a crash interrupted the silence, a deafening blow against the diner's wounded walls. The ground beneath them quivered, and a blinding light erupted through the entrance as the truck exploded outside. Flames licking the air, consuming everything it touched. And as the smoke thickened and the flames raged, a singular thought echoed fiercely in his mind. They were all embroiled in a game, far bigger than any of them had imagined, and betrayal was only the beginning. What new nightmare awaited them in the heart of the storm? The diner erupted in chaos, the explosion's shockwave colliding violently with Jonathan, sending him staggering back against a booth. The acrid smell of smoke twisted through the air, stinging his lungs as he struggled to regain his footing. Desperation gripped him. The diner had transformed into a battleground. Fire licking the walls, embers swirling like hungry spirits, and pieces of glass raining down like seething tears. Angela, Nia, was momentarily stunned, her face pale, eyes wide with disbelief. He could barely recognize the woman whose strength had once captivated him, now reduced to a mere reflection of the person he thought he knew. His heart thudded in time with the countdown ticking away. "We need to get out," Jacob yelled, pointing toward a rear exit cloaked in swirling smoke and chaos. Amid the diner's wails, the thunderous crack of debris crashing around them forged a twisted rhythm of panic. But before they could even make a move, the man in the hat, David, snarled, his grin wide but menacing. "Fools," he taunted, a playful menace in his tone. "You think you can escape?" He took a step forward, and every face turned toward him, caught in the spotlight of fear. But all eyes widened when he yanked open his jacket to reveal not a weapon, but a slim, sleek device pulsing ominously in his grip. Jonathan felt every muscle in his body tighten, heart racing. "What is that?" he demanded, pulse hammering in his ears. And then came the revelation, the horrifying truth that clawed at the edges of sanity. "A failsafe," David sneered. "You see, I placed this diner under surveillance long before you got here." "What?" Joanna gasped, and a chorus of disbelief spread through the room, as if every breath collectively froze. Was this the trap he had never seen? And as if to dismantle their fears, David added, "It'll send a signal to the syndicate, and they'll clean up the mess." Silence swallowed them whole, the weight of betrayal sinking deeper than the explosions cascading around them. Jonathan glanced at Angela, her face contorted in horror, betrayal etched starkly across her features. You've been working for them?" "Like I said," David continued, now oozing smug confidence, "I've had everything under wraps. You two? You were always pawns in the game." But just as despair threatened to wash over them, Angela surged forward. "I was never a pawn. I was trying to escape, David. All of this, it wasn't supposed to happen." Her voice trembled, a raw, desperate energy vibrating between them. But before another word could be uttered, the walls quaked again, light trembling in the diner's flickering bulbs, as the real storm unleashed itself. Dark figures stormed through the broken entrance, their faces obscured by masks, armed with weapons gleaming under the sickly light. "David!" one of them shouted, voice slicing through the air like a knife. "You have to leave. Now!" Everything spiraled into a frenzy as the agents advanced, weapons drawn. In that moment, the room fell silent, a breath stolen from reality. David paled under the assault, his bravado failing for the first time. "I did everything you asked. I followed every order." But the answer he received was swift. "Your useless games have cost us, David." The fear, the betrayal, the revelation of alliances intertwined with deception spread like wildfire. But just as the confrontation mounted, a deafening roar erupted from outside. A helicopter sliced through the stormy sky above, its blades whipping like a grim heartbeat. Light flooded the diner as a spotlight swung inside, illuminating the panicked faces around him, revealing something Jonathan never anticipated. Angela's eyes locked onto him. Realization dawned. "Jonathan, wait! I wasn't—" But the words were drowned by the whirring chaos of the helicopter above. The room crackled with energy, simmering with a truth that had been waiting to ignite. And then, as if scripted by fate, a figure dropped from the helicopter, gliding down toward them with practiced ease. A familiar face, wide-eyed and determined. Jonathan's heart dropped as recognition hit harder than the explosion. It was her, his former partner, Mia, the one he thought had been lost to the cracks of their past. "You!" he gasped, heart racing as her presence sent shockwaves through the air, reshaping the narrative. "Trust me," she shouted, resolved and fierce, her gun aimed directly at David. And in that moment, everything shifted. The secrets his heart had clung to shattered. In the chaos, relationships twisted and contorted. No one was who they seemed, and the storm that loomed held promises of conflict untold. How long had they been players in a game far more sinister than any of them could comprehend? Clarity settled. This was a conspiracy entwined in their lives from the beginning. A dark truth, finally clawing free of its bindings, leaving Jonathan breathless. In the eye of the storm, everything had transformed irreversibly. They were now caught in the heart of a storm that held devastating consequences. And the question echoed through the chaos. Who could they trust now? The flames danced behind them. But in that chaotic moment, everything slowed. Jonathan felt his heart clench. Mia stood firm, gun aimed at David, resolving to bring this madness to an end. "They'll take you down, David," she said, her voice steady, drowning out the roar of the helicopter. "You can't win this." David's confident mask slipped for the first time. Anger flashed across his face, but uncertainty crept in, too. "You think you know the game? This was never about you." "Then let's end it," Mia shot back, her eyes fierce. Jonathan could feel the weight of her words, the promise of action, ready to break the chains that had wrapped their lives in a gnarly knot. Angela, Nia, stood frozen between them, the weight of her double life crashing down. "I wasn't trying to betray anyone," she pleaded, desperation lacing her voice. I just wanted to survive. Jonathan stepped forward, feeling the heat from the flames on his face, his emotions a wild storm. You lied to us. You brought us into this craziness. I didn't know, she cried, hands shaking, eyes damp. I thought I could help. I thought I'd found a way out. But they found me. In that moment, something shifted in the air. He glanced around at the gathering storm behind Mia. Agents moving in, ready to pounce. Jacob was by the door, breathless, urging everyone forward. We can't fix any of this standing here. We need to go. With the helicopter bearing down, a flash of hope lit in Jonathan's chest. They could get out. They could escape this storm. Mia, get Angela and Jacob. We'll make it to the back, he shouted, adrenaline flooding his veins, pushing them all forward. Together. The crisis cascaded into action as they all faced David, who still held that ominous device. You think you're leaving? He spat, eyes narrowing. Watch us, Mia responded, unwavering. And like wind knocking down a card house, chaos swept through the diner. The agents surged ahead, and Jonathan felt Angela's hand slip into his, their trust tipping back toward each other, despite everything they had fought through. They maneuvered through the swirling smoke, pushing out into the street and feeling the rain lash against them. For a heart-stopping moment, it felt like freedom might just be a breath away. Behind them, the diner erupted in an inferno, the walls collapsing like a memory long forgotten. The unseen ties that had bound them severed with that act, and in that instant, the storm shifted. As they rounded a corner, the helicopter surged above, lights sweeping over the street. With each pounding heartbeat, adrenaline filled Jonathan, the thrill of survival pushing him forward. He looked at Angela, her face streaked with soot and emotion. We're not done yet, he promised. We need to make sure he can't get back. Jacob interjected, urgency coloring his words. The fight wasn't over, not yet. And as they fled into the rainy night, one thing was certain. The storm had reshaped them all, the echoes of their past clinging, yet lighting the path ahead. They weren't the same people who had walked into that diner. Strength surged within them, a shared understanding forged in fire. Maybe the storms they faced didn't just threaten to tear them apart. They also had the power to bind them together when it mattered most. In the distance, the city sparkled through the droplets of rain, an uncharted canvas woven with hope. An unknown future lay ahead, and whatever it held, they would meet it together. As Jonathan sighed deeply, he thought of the hidden dangers awaiting them in the shadows. And then, a chilling whisper caught his ear. You thought you could escape? You're only just beginning. That subtle reminder hung in the air like an unwelcome specter, hinting that the storm was still brewing, just out of sight. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And share this video right now with at least 5 friends who need to know how this ends. You must subscribe now. True fans, don't wait another second to share.